our job is to teach them the fundamental skills that they will utilize, that they will bring to their operational detachments in the future.
We want guys that understand why they're here. What's driving them to be successful here? It's not just to one day put on a Green Beret. That doesn't really get you where you need to be, right? It's what do you really want to do? We prepare students to go out to selections. We actually run the Special Forces Preparation Course, which prepares new recruits into the Army that have raised their right hand and decided to give Special Forces a shot. And so our cadre prepares them for the rigors of that going forward to maximize their chances of success out there. Once they've completed selection and completed their small unit tactics training, then they come back to 4th Battalion, where we have the MOS, the Military Occupational Specialties. We have the 18 Alphas, which are the officer course. They're detachment commanders. 18 Bravos, which are Special Forces weapons sergeants. 18 Charlies, which are engineer demo sergeants, and then 18 Echoes, which are the communication sergeants. And so our job is to teach them the fundamental skills that they will utilize, that they will bring to their operational detachments in the future, and ensure that they're set up for success.
I think one of the proudest moments of, I know, my career, certainly, definitely in life, is donning that Green Beret, because it's the culmination of this whole process. But in order to get there, it has to start with that recruit and assess piece. When we go through that process and we're identifying what we're looking for in our candidates, what are those character traits that we're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, to hit on a few specifically, you kind of discussed a little bit, but is it adaptability, teamwork, integrity, all those things that kind of these intangible things that we holistically need from an individual to show up here with, then we can mold the rest of that around them, right? We need people that can work on teams, be comfortable, alone and unafraid, and have the ability to really adapt to their environment, because we throw a ton of different things at you. Obviously, this isn't the most fun place in the world at all times, right?
What are you talking about?
You have to be resilient.
I had a great trip here.
Oh, yeah, you have, right?
Yeah, but you have to be resilient in that manner, right? When it's cold and wet, it sucks. You have to we want guys that understand why they're here. What's driving them to be successful here? It's not just to one day put on a Green Beret. I mean, that's an ultimate perk of the job, but that doesn't really get you where you need to be, right? It's what do you really want to do? And those are the questions that we ask these guys every time we see them, like, why are you here? And if you don't know why you're here, then you really need to think about it. And if you don't already have the inherent kind of grit and resiliency, you don't have the ability to work on a team and be adaptable, then you won't find success. Your why can be 1,000 different things, right? It doesn't really matter, because you're the greatest patriot on earth, and you want to, fight and win wars for America. Or you saw Rambo and thought it was awesome, and you want to be that guy. Ultimately, that doesn't matter. Well, yeah, right. I mean, whatever the movie is, I don't know. We need a new one, but that doesn't matter as much as those inherent, abilities to really go above and beyond yourself to be a part of a team. That's, I think, to me, when you boil it down, that's what we're really looking for.
Yeah, I think coming through the course, and certainly graduating the course, it's a culmination of, in one way, but it's really the beginning.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And that's when you're actually going to get out there and, okay, you made it you got a seat at the table now. Right. Now, what are you actually going to do with that seat at the table? And what I hear you saying is that character is what matters. Yeah. Because as you put people and leaders in different situations, their character is going to come through. The more they're tested, the different ways that they're tested. We're going to ask people in Special Forces to do different things that they may never even think about. Right. And they're going to show up to their team, and they're going to go be asked to do that, and not only do it, but succeed. And it's going to take a very defined person to be able to go out and do those.
There's no way that we can mirror every scenario that people are going to run into. And so that's why we focus on the person and the soft attributes, and one of them being adaptability, because the amount of situations that just the three of us could talk about that we were never trained for, but that we encountered, is critical. And so it's really training that person so that they can adapt and overcome and be successful at the end of the day, be successful for themselves, their team, and the nation, no matter what comes down their way.
Can you talk about the scenario-based training? Because I think that's probably the most important thing. So as you look at the respective MOS courses, you're going to have, the courses are obviously going to follow a certain structure. You're going to teach them hard skills that they need for their job, and then you're going to put them in scenario-based training. As you develop out those scenarios, what are you looking at, and how are you best tailoring that to the current environment, and how do you project forward what they might endure?
I'll hand it over to Matt in a second, but to talk some of those specifics. But as far as the lash up with the how do we stay relevant, we have a very, very tight lash up with the operational force. So we are aware of what's going on. We seek feedback from them to help develop our scenarios, and then we do have critical pieces that some things are just go either you can do the task or you can't, right? And then other things are definitely starts with selecting the right people to be instructors, who then put their subjective evaluation on a student going forward and to determine their success. And so, but at the end of the day, even if somebody is not successful within the course and they leave and go back to the larger Army, our goal is to make sure that they leave better than when they got here. So they have skills. They may not be Green Berets, but they have skills, and they can take some of those things back to the force and continue to enhance. So I'll hand it over to Matt to talk some about it.
Yeah, I mean, from a scenario-based training perspective, that is something that really, I think, sets us apart, right? Because like you mentioned, we give you and teach you hard skills, whatever that may be, right? If that's your weapon sergeant, engineer sergeant, communicator sergeant, whatever. Your ability to use a radio or employ a weapon system or, build a bee hut in the middle of somewhere, or something that you can tangibly bring to a team. But what we really try to do is eke out your capabilities under stress. And the way we do that is through different scenarios, right? And we spent a lot of time, money, and effort on developing these robust, rigorous scenarios that really test the individual, not just on their skills that we've given you, but on their ability to operate, as a functional, well-rounded, robust, human being in a dynamic environment, because that's the key to our success. We don't do anything in a vacuum, and it requires that ability to think outside the box, employ these hard skills that we've given you in a stressful, extremely dynamic environment. And that's something that we put a lot of emphasis on here.
Standards are one of the most important things when we talk about building great organizations, especially when we look at the selection process, the assessment process, and the training, right? Because you're always being assessed. And even when you go out to your unit, when you go out to your job, we talk about in the civilian world, you have performance assessments, just like we did in the Army, which have to be more than once a year. I have spent a lot of time speaking with executive leaderships in a lot of different companies, and they'll say, "Oh, we give formal feedback once a year." And it's like, so once a year you tell your people how you're doing. What about the other days, where feedback needs to be continuous? Because you can't uphold a standard once a year. You have to uphold the standard every day. How do you guys view standards? And I'll put it in the context of we're in a difficult time. Okay, recruiting is no secret. Recruiting across the Army is at lower levels than it's been in the past 20 years or so. SOF has been asked to cut 7,000 positions this year. We've been asked to cut 750 last year. But you still got to field the force, and that force has to be of high quality. As you look at the standards across the different MOS courses, how are you upholding those standards?
Upholding those standards is actually fairly easy because all you do is don't change them and continue on, right? And so we're both, as well as the entire chain of command, is the standard is the standard is the standard. Now, we may have to do extra work prior to that in training folks and adding in different training iterations to make sure that people are meeting that standard. And that's what we've done, and that's what we'll continue to do. But if it comes down between dropping the standard and getting more people through, nobody's, our focus is on getting the best initial entry Green Berets out to the force that have met the standard. And we've been able to do that. And the great thing about America is that there are still plenty of young people out there that are willing to answer the call. Sometimes they may need a little help, The younger new generation maybe hasn't spent as much time outdoors and playing sports. Okay, that's fine. We can help you with that. And so we employ operational psychologists. We have our preservation of the force and family effort through SOCOM, gym coaches and whatnot to get people physically, mentally prepared for the rigors that they may not have experienced previously in their life, but they're about to if they continue down this path.
Yeah, talk to just briefly real quick. It's easy in that manner, right? Like we understand them. We empower our companies and our committees to employ those standards and maintain them to the highest level. And then at the end of the day, probably depending on who you ask, the worst or best part of our job is that at the end we get to adjudicate those standards all the time. And it is difficult to sit there and have a conversation with an individual that hasn't met those standards and let them know that unfortunately at this time they haven't, but that's what has to be done. Our standards are unwavering in the sense that we hold very heavily the weight that we understand we're sending guys out to the force to go do some of the hardest things in the world, and it can't just be because you're a good dude, right? That's not what we do here. My buddies that are team sergeants and company sergeant majors and battalion CSMs all rely on us to make those judgment calls the right way. And that's what we do.